Again, as I mentioned, deterrence means no longer no war. There will be conflicts and wars, but just below the threshold of nuclear
Yes,
weapons.
this conflict is a step ahead, like I said in the beginning. And I think, like you said, Pakistan is not going to stop.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. Today, we are having Mr. Niranjan Marjani, and he's the founder and managing director of Buenos Aires Enterprises Private Limited, a company that is working on strengthening the India and Spain relations around the world. He's also editor in chief of Global Horizons, a new age digital portal that kind of promotes research as well as those in the areas that play a very vital role in shaping the world affairs on a large scale. He has a great specialty in international relations and geopolitics, and we are glad to have you on board, Mr. Niranjan. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Kinnari, for inviting me to your podcast. I am happy to join this conversation, and I hope it would be a great discussion.
I'm sure. I'm very excited to have you on board as well. I think the topic that we are going to discuss today is related to the India-Pakistan 2025 crisis that we have all seen. And especially as Indians, it was quite a moment for all of us to really understand what was happening, why it was happening, and why it matters for future as well in the coming generations. And that is why we love to have your insights, how you interpret those moments, what you see down there, uh, and get some of your perspectives on how this can really shape not just the regional stability and security in the Asia Pacific region, but also affect the stability and security of the international community. So let's talk about how the 2025 conflict between the two countries was different, important from their previous clashes, and because we all know it wasn't like the one that we had earlier. So yeah.
Yes, I think the 2025 conflict between India and Pakistan, to a certain extent, it was different, but I would say we have seen this type of conflicts earlier as well. I think what triggered the conflict was that Pakistan's army chief, General Asim Munir, then General Asim Munir, and now Field Marshal Asim Munir, he was trying to like reassert the two nation theory and was trying to in a way provoke the either Pakistani army or even the Pakistani people and the Pakistani non-state actors to take some kinetic action against India, against Indian forces, particularly in Kashmir. So I think that was really the start of the conflict, not the actual Pahalgam incident on April 22nd, but a few days earlier when Asim Munir made that speech, he kind of started a conflict there. And one of the reasons I think why he brought up the two nations theory and uh, also, he supported Pakistan's creation on the grounds that Hindus and Muslims cannot live together, cannot exist together. That really led to uh, the killing of 26 Indians after confirming their religion. Now, a reason I think is that Pakistan has been losing its narrative on Jammu and Kashmir, and particularly against India for last many years. One of the reason being India has been very proactively pursuing its foreign policy and has been reaching out to a number of countries and has been very vocal about protecting its interest. In particular, Pakistan, which previously had very close relations with the Muslim world, particularly the Gulf countries. Now, even though it has good relations, but I think India is way ahead of Pakistan when it comes to engagements with the Gulf states, because we have seen in past decade or so, India has strengthened and diversified its engagements with countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, going beyond oil trade and remittances from the Indian diaspora, because now these countries are
Yeah.
India's strategic partners, and also these are India's like among top five trade partners, which means that now Pakistan is nowhere near where India is with the Gulf countries. So I think in a way,
Yeah.
and also many of these Muslim countries, they didn't really respond very enthusiastically when India abrogated Article 370, which on which the Kashmir issue was the main connecting point between Pakistan and the Muslim world. But Pakistan has not been getting a very positive response from either Muslim world or even I would say from OIC, Organization of Islamic
Hmm.
Countries, which is supposed to be the second largest multilateral organization after the UN. Yes, they do pass a resolution here and there, but again, I mean, they are not very keen on pursuing this Kashmir issue or like interfering in the Kashmir issue. So I think Pakistan
Yeah.
did not have that ground, to stand in the Muslim world, which I think and so I think that was the trigger point where Asim Munir, in a way, provoked the so-called non-state actors to, you know, carry out killings in Kashmir again, particularly when since abrogation of Article 370, the incidents of terrorism have reduced. I won't say they have stopped totally, or that the terror infrastructure has not been totally dismantled, but the incidents have reduced. Just to carry forward what they have been doing in Kashmir, I think that was the importance of Asim Munir's speech and the events following that speech, what happened in Pahalgam and how India responded. So I think that is I think very precisely the background of the conflict that we saw in May 2025 between India and Pakistan.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, whatever you said was also to the point, because though I completely agree with you that India has made a lot of good relations with the other Islamic countries and especially with the OIC's countries, and they weren't really, uh, uh, proactive in when Article 370 was abrogated. And also, when we saw that the recent attacks and India started blaming Pakistan for the Pahalgam attack because it was a state-sponsored terrorism and stuff like that. But then we also saw the other regional actors as well. For example, China. They did not really give a statement out or condemn and not or not even said a word immediately after the attack. It took them weeks to come out and say publicly. So we have seen that how India has become very assertive and aggressive in their foreign policy relations, and most importantly, kind of maintaining the dominance that we did not had earlier before 2014. I would specifically mention that because there was a time before that India Pakistan relations were actually defined and shaped by how other actors would think about the Asia Pacific region and how they define the map out to be. But I think this conflict kind of paved the way, saying that this is not going to happen anymore, and we will decide in terms of like the countries in the Asia Pacific region will decide and determine how the region is going to be surrounded and the region is going to be working together. So yeah, definitely, but I also feel that this conflict has been different from what we saw earlier, especially after the 1999 Kargil war, and also in terms of like escalatory ladder, in terms of first we had like surgical strike that was going sending out in the army,
Yes.
and then we had the Balaport, and then we have the conflict using those ballistic missiles, Scalp, Brahmos, and hammer precision guided bombs. And most importantly, what was really appreciating that we were able to use the technology that we were working on and developing over the last couple of decades, because all these systems were kind of supported by cyber warfare and AI surveillance activity. So in terms of like usage of technology and developments, we have, I think, taken a big jump in the escalatory ladder as compared to what we saw in the 1999 Kargil war or in the other surgical or Balapur strike and then in 2025 conflict.
Yes, certainly. I think what this conflict showed is that India's indigenous defense production has been very successful, and India has been putting a lot of stress on indigenizing and producing most of the defense equipment uh, locally. I think this
Yeah.
conflict did display India's expertise in defense manufacturing, as a number of weapons and missiles and drones which were used were Indian made and not imported. Although it's true that India still remains one of the largest importers of arms, but India's domestic defense manufacturing has expanded substantially. And like you said, and I would also like to add that as how this conflict was different from previous ones, like we saw when uh, Uri happened, we had a surgical strike across the border. So at that time, India just crossed over into POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, hit the terror
Mm.
targets, and they came back. In case of Balakot, I think India crossed one threshold, that India crossed international border and then attacked the terror infrastructure. And this time also, we saw India did attack different terrorist bases. And when Pakistan escalated the conflict, India was successful in attacking their military bases as well, and were damaging their air bases. So I think
Yeah.
India, with each conflict, we see that India is taking one step further. And I wouldn't say that this is escalation, but I think escalation was from Pakistan's side, because Pakistan normally attacks either Indian civilians or military targets through their non-state actors. Although I use the term
Yeah.
so-called non-state actors because most of these are actually Pakistani military personnel who just
Hmm.
attack, carry out attacks in the guise of terrorists or all the non-state actors belonging to different groups. So India did have specific targets to hit inside Pakistan, but Pakistan did not have any specific target to respond or to hit inside India, which meant that they attacked Indian civilians and military targets, which led to Indian response, and that Indian missiles carried out attacks on various air bases. So I think that is
Yeah.
the difference between India and Pakistan. India does have specific targets inside Pakistan, and India did carry out all its attacks in a very uh, precise manner, and targeting only the concerned infrastructures, and not targeting any civilian areas in the process. But that's not the case with Pakistan. But I think India has been responding very strongly in the past few years, and India is not actually afraid to, cross the international border and carry out attacks deep inside Pakistan's territory, which was not the case earlier. Because even
Yeah.
though earlier there were attacks, what used to happen was that Indian security forces used to engage all the either terrorists or even Pakistan's military uh, from within inside Indian territory, and not there was not much crossing of the international border. The same was the case with most of the wars we have seen between India and Pakistan. India has adhered to the Simla Agreement by not crossing the LOC many times, but I think now India uh, is taking a very bold step of not really bothering about the agreement, because Pakistan has been violating the Simla Agreement for like last 5 decades, which means now India
Yeah.
is trying to match its response to the way Pakistan carries out attacks against India from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I feel that, as you said, the response was even the response time was much more different. The language and the posture in terms of how
Yes,
we came out publicly, how there was a public condemnation, trying to identify, tell the world. And I think it was also from the both the sides, sending out the delegations to the rest of the world, showing that the other side was involved, the other side was saying, no, we were not involved. So I think the response time and everything, and most importantly, I feel that media kind of play a very important role in shaping and maybe facilitating those responses a little faster. Because during the 1999 war, we did not have a lot of media and social media, for
yes,
instance. So public were not really aware of what is happening right at the moment. But because of the media and because of the the AI disseminated information and even maybe false information at times. Public was aware like every second, every minute what was happening, and the pressure was kind of building up, to just respond aggressively. And also because of asking religions to everyone and killing, it kind of affected everyone's sentiments to the core.
Yes, definitely. And like you mentioned, India sent delegations to various countries to put forward its perspective, its side of the conflict. I would like to say, and Indian media did play a very important role in this conflict, which informed people about all the everything that was going on. And Indian public was very well informed in this type of conflict and not really uh, carried away by some narrative. But I would just like to mention one personal experience of mine because during this conflict, I had the opportunity to interact with international media, and one narrative I saw in at international level, not with the Indian media, is that uh, either international media or particularly, the Pakistani experts that used to appear on that media, they were trying to shape the narrative that this all these military responses from Indian side to Pakistan was actually India's doing because uh, India abrogated Article 370 in 2019, and that really triggered all these activities in Kashmir and Pakistan support for the Kashmiri people. That is the narrative that I saw was doing rounds in international media, which is, I think, wrong. And I did put forward India's side by saying that you cannot, restrict this conflict to just 6 years back 2019 because it did not start in 2019. This conflict is very old. This conflict is almost 8 decades old. So you cannot just pin the
Yeah.
blame on that one step that India has taken, which is India's internal matter of abrogating Article 370. So you cannot argue that because India abrogated Article 370, the attacks against Indians are justified from Pakistan's side. So I
Yeah.
think this is very important, and India did the very right thing by sending delegations because it gave the message and also it gave the complete side of this conflict, complete picture of this conflict, and did not restrict to just this one or two incidents or just so that everyone can blame India. So I think that was also very important to put forward India's narrative uh, because India, and I think India should continue with this because we cannot let either international media or even Pakistan shape the narrative that whatever India has done, Pakistan is responding to that. Actually, India has never provoked Pakistan. It was always Pakistan that provoked India into all the conflicts, right from 1948 to this 2025. So the narrative and the information warfare was equally important in this conflict, and it played a great role in shaping India's response and putting forward India's side to the world.
Absolutely. I would just summarize in terms of like it was faster tech, smarter weapons,
Yes,
and maybe shorter fuse.
yes, definitely. And India,
Yeah.
I think, used
So,
everything
all right.
very effectively in this warfare.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, the kind of technology advancements that we were hearing about, we were also able to see it practically, what that the kind of destruction it really make.
Yes, definitely. And
Absolutely.
India put to use all its not only military technology but also all the information warfare, all the narrative building that is required, which I think it was lacking previously. And there was just a rhetoric of the two sides should resolve all the conflicts through dialogue on all their issues through dialogue and discussion. But I think now India is taking very practical steps and not really getting caught into all those rhetoric and theoretical all the theoretical arguments that no, just talk to each other and resolve all those conflicts. But India is
Yeah.
responding. India is imposing costs on Pakistan, which with each attack, and that is what we saw during this conflict as well.
That's true. That's absolutely true. All right. So next up, I think the most serious part of the conversation would be the threat of nuclear escalation and the risk associated with that. So, I mean, obviously, the 2025 conflict did not really go nuclear, but do you think it got close, or how this would affect the extended deterrence in the region?
I think this talk about a nuclear conflict or any conflict escalating to use of nuclear weapons, it has been, I think, it's not recent. I would say it's very old. This all this discussion and all this what you say narrative about or using nuclear weapons as a kind of blackmail so that India would not escalate any conflict or any war. But I think
Hmm.
India did already cross nuclear threshold when India carried out
Yeah.
attacks during attacks on Balakot in 2019 after the Pulwama attack. Because at that time, before I think those attacks, most of the time Pakistan used these nuclear weapons as a deterrence against India, and saying that the two neighboring countries having nuclear weapons, they cannot afford to escalate conflict, while supporting these non-state actors and the terror groups to carry out attacks inside Indian territory in Kashmir and elsewhere. But at that time, India did its best not to escalate any or not to fall prey to any provocation from Pakistan's side. But I think that has changed in the last decade or so, and particularly after the Balakot attacks. I think uh, India does not take the threat of nuclear attacks seriously, because that has been Pakistan has not really used any nuclear weapons against India, even when India carried out attacks inside Pakistani territory. Similarly, during the conflict in May, uh, there was all this, there were all these talks and discussions about will this war go nuclear. But at that time also, I didn't think that this war could have gone nuclear. Again, because Pakistan. Pakistan just uses nuclear wars as an excuse. Now we have been seeing the Russia-Ukraine war for like more than 3 years, and also all the time we have been hearing that anytime the war could go nuclear, but that has not happened actually. It happens in
Yeah.
all the conflicts. Even we know Israel is also nuclear states having nuclear weapons, but even Israel and Iran also has nuclear weapons. Like as US and Israel claim. But even that war didn't go nuclear, although they exchanged missiles for a long time. But no war after, I think, Second World War has gone nuclear, and most countries have built nuclear arsenal as a deterrence. But I don't think, particularly when a country is trying to provoke other country, that is working, and certainly not in case of India and Pakistan. The nuclear threat has not worked, and I think India recognizes that, and India is not holding back because of that nuclear threat or that fear that it might escalate into a nuclear conflict, and Pakistan might actually use a nuclear bomb. India did, I mean, attack Pakistan several times, but Pakistan has not been able to do that. So, at least in case of India, the nuclear threat is not working. It may be working for other countries, like maybe Western countries may feel that fear or threat that if a conflict becomes nuclear, it could destabilize the entire region. But I think India does not think so, and India is strong enough to deal with any conflict or escalation.
That's absolutely true. And I completely agree that since years we have seen Pakistan using nuclear weapons as a
Yeah.
threat, but they are trying to, it's the false perception or trying the threat they are giving. And that is completely true that India have actually long recognized that this is just a false threat and they are no longer willing to use it because it's just difficult. It's no longer valid anymore. But I also feel that these threats, maybe what if like Pakistan also understands that India is considering our threat of nuclear weapons as a false threat. And what if it leads to more miscalculations or misinterpretations of each other's intent that could actually risk going nuclear? Is it something that you see happening?
I don't see it happening, and I think more than India, I think Pakistan's nuclear threat nowadays is aimed more towards the Western countries, just to involve them in this conflict and to benefit from them and to uh, you know improve ties with the Western world. I think it is more directed towards that. That's what appeared in the conflict that took place in May. Like Pakistan
Yeah.
claims that US mediated, and also there was this all these stories going on that US feared that India might have hit Pakistan's nuclear bases, and fearing a nuclear leak, I think the US intervened. That was their narrative, which India, of course, did not accept, and
Hmm.
India has its own version, and India has clearly put forward how the conflict ended and how America did not have a role. But I think Pakistan also recognizes that it can no longer use the nuclear threat against India. But like I said, it could be the case that Pakistan is using it more to get benefit from the Western countries, because that is what
That's true.
Pakistan's policy has been for like as long as it has existed, to either use its
Yeah.
geographical location or to use the threat of nuclear conflict to gain benefits, to get into the good books of the Western world, and that is exactly what we are seeing has happened since May.
Yeah. Absolutely. But as you mentioned, that it's a false threat and everything, but we have seen that Pakistan has relied more on strategic signaling. For example, they're using that threat, putting their delivery systems on alert, moving out their weapons here and there, doing media leaks, and showing that India has a threat of nuclear weapons. But what if it leads to like mistakes or maybe unauthorized use or weapons falling into the hands of non-state actors, when you're doing such kind of movings, alerting the delivery systems and stuff like that. I think in term no, I would say that it's just not about Pakistani government using nuclear weapons or not. I mean, I agree to you that they might not because of the pressure from the international community, but there's always a risk of those weapons falling into the hands of non-state actor because it's a very volatile country, it's very fragile, and and that could actually risk to serious mistakes or maybe miscalculations in the future.
There is possibility, but again, I think I don't think this could happen because I mean, I think you know better because you work in the area of nuclear weapons, that it's a very complex technology. And yes, I agree that
That's
non-state actors are, mostly military trained, and they use very advanced military technologies. But still, I would say this as a layman, that nuclear weapons and nuclear technology is very complex. It requires high level of expertise, and it has many layers of security, so that it's not just easy that you push a button and you can drop a nuclear bomb on any target. That is what my understanding of
yeah,
nuclear technology is, which makes it a bit
yeah,
difficult. I'm not saying impossible, but it makes it a bit difficult for non-state actors to actually, even if they get access to nuclear technology, to use the nuclear technology. But then again, like you said, Pakistan is a volatile country, and non-state actors, they do play a great role in the politics and the security of Pakistan. Maybe then they could gain that power to blackmail even international community to get
yeah.
certain benefits, and to gain from this nuclear blackmail. But as far as using them in any conflict, I think that is a bit difficult, seems to a bit difficult right now. With what my understanding about nuclear technology is, it's not very easy to use. It's not like a rifle that you can just learn to fire and shoot. So nuclear technology is a bit
Absolutely.
more complicated, and it does require a lot of expertise to even, use nuclear bomb or to drop a nuclear bomb.
That's true. Absolutely. So, do you think their nuclear doctrines are also evolving because Pakistan has a first use doctrine and India doesn't have a no first use but a second strike capabilities doctrine. So, with credible minimum deterrence, and India has said that if you strike first, we'll strike it more harder. So, do you think that those doctrines are evolving or they are becoming much more ambiguous? Um, after this 2025 conflict?
Yes, I would say ambiguous, and I also am not very sure where those doctrines stand at the moment. That a country has a first use
Hmm.
doctrine and another country has no first use doctrine, because like we were discussing, India and Pakistan conflict. Now I think India has already crossed that nuclear threshold, and the threat of nuclear weapons is no longer working on India, and it's not really holding India back from responding to Pakistan's provocation. So I think what India's doctrine stands where it is, but I'm not sure where Pakistan's doctrine would stand after India has repeatedly shown courage to respond to Pakistan despite its nuclear deterrence or nuclear threats of nuclear attacks on Indian cities.
And I also feel that, I mean, though we have the doctrine of no first use, and I think India might abide also when in times of
Yes.
need, but I think it has just become ambiguous, and we don't know where it stands right now because it was made
Exactly.
after the second nuclear test and under the pressure
Yes.
from
Yes.
international community. So it's quite vague, and to really rely on that doctrine that was made like decades ago to really understand the situation today and how India might actually respond. But if we zoom out on the bigger picture, what do you think this conflict means for the region? Because this wasn't just another India Pakistan conflict that we have seen over the years, right? This was a moment where we saw a drastic power shift in the dynamics between the countries, and not just in the Asia but South Asia, but also the whole Asia Pacific region. So how do you think that, how that conflict is going to affect the power dynamics in the region from now on?
Certainly, this conflict would affect power dynamics in the region. Firstly, because if we look at the bigger picture, or in general terms, I would say that now Asia Pacific has gained more traction in case of economic and strategic terms than uh, Europe had previously during the two world
Yeah.
wars. So I think from that perspective also, this conflict is important for the region and in shaping its security architecture in the future. Secondly,
Yeah.
India-Pakistan conflict is not really only about the two countries, conflict between the two countries, but like it is, you know, it is a representation of the global order and the global conflicts, and many powers they have their interest in each side, and it has always been the case, and even in this conflict, we saw that happening. So one particular
Yeah.
standout point for me was that while uh, India and US relations are growing stronger, but then US did seem to more tilt towards Pakistan in this conflict, as was the case before US relations started getting stronger in the early 2000s. Previously, during all the conflicts, US Pakistan relations were very close, very strong, and that's what we saw kind of a reset between US and Pakistan relations from this conflict, like US favoring this conflict. Now, this is also a reflection of how US looks at the current global order, or in general, where the global order stands today, is that again, we see a reflection of the Russia-Ukraine war, because like the most Western countries are backing Ukraine. America also backed Pakistan because India again remains a close strategic partner of Russia, and India did use Russian-made defense equipment in this conflict very successfully, particularly the S-400 missile defense system. So I think that the reflection of a global conflict, particularly the Russia-Ukraine war, that was also what we saw in this conflict. And also, I would like to say it also reflects more on how America sees the world. I think even today, to a great extent, US and India, they are not on the same page when it comes to strategic interest or strategic perspective, because for India, of course, because of its geographical location, China is a bigger threat, and in
Yeah.
South Asia, as well as in the Asia Pacific, or even Indo Pacific, as the geostrategic construct is used widely. So for India, China is a
Hmm.
bigger threat, but I think even today for US and for most of the European countries, Russia remains a bigger threat. Now, of course, due to the war going on in Ukraine, this is very easier to accept for European countries and the US. But again, I think this goes back to the days of Cold War, where the Russia or Soviet Union at that time was a major threat. And I think even to a certain extent, the US looks at Russia as a major threat. And not just in case of supporting India, but also I think US has backed Pakistan particularly to counter Russia's influence in South Asia, particularly in Afghanistan. I believe
Yeah.
that case even remains today, and US still depends on Pakistan as a strategic partner inside Afghanistan. Although we cannot say for sure how much Pakistan and Afghanistan get along well together, because both the countries have been at odds for past many years, especially after Taliban came into power in 2021, and Pakistani government and Pakistani military establishments, they are not on the best of terms with the Taliban government in Afghanistan. But still, I think uh, I do believe that US still pursues Afghanistan as Russia's backyard, Afghanistan and Central Asian countries, and it tries to use Pakistan's influence. Although it may not be much today, but still, I think US to a certain extent is going by that, thinking that it can depend on Pakistan, to counter Russia's influence in some way in Afghanistan and other countries in the region. That is what I feel.
Hmm.
Another factor, if you could just
Yeah.
allow me to bring
Hmm.
in, then okay.
Sure.
Okay, so another factor which is very less talked is that we always discuss the role of United States, China, Russia in all these conflicts. But one factor is often overlooked, and I would say that is of Turkey, because Turkey is not
Hmm.
just Pakistan's close strategic partner, uh, and its interest in Kashmir is not because just to support Pakistan against India, but it does have its independent interests in South Asia as well. It's not restricted to
Yeah.
supporting Pakistan, but Turkey does have uh, good relations with many countries apart from Pakistan. Particularly, I think recently Turkey and Bangladesh have built very close strategic partnership, and Turkey is also supplying weapons to Bangladesh. Similarly, Turkey and Maldives also share good relations, and uh, uh, for Turkey, its Kashmir is not just to show support for Pakistan, but independently as well. Turkey views Kashmir as a sphere of its own dominance, because it relies on its history, and like how Turkey and Turkish rulers have ruled South Asia, and Kashmir was included in that. So I think beyond Pakistan, Turkey has independent interests in supporting Kashmir's cause against India's security interest. And I would say Turkey's role would only grow more in coming days. One reason is that uh, Turkey has been very close with the Central Asian countries, because they also belong to the same ethnicity as Turkey. And
Hmm.
Turkey does have very close cultural ties with most of the, barring Tajikistan, the four Central Asian countries. But now, even those Central Asian countries are following an independent foreign policy, and now they are trying to look beyond Turkey. As we recently saw that, like three, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and another country, they recognized Cyprus as an independent country, which Turkey does not recognize.
Hmm.
So I think now Turkey
Yeah.
would look forward to some new areas to influence and to, push forward its foreign policy, and to push forward its cultural agenda as well. So I think Turkey's role is also one to watch for in the future.
That's absolutely true, and I think that's a great point that you have come up with, because we always focus on America, Russia, and China in order to understand the dynamics between India and Pakistan. Though at this point in time, let me start off with what I think in terms of, like, I think India has given kind of a strategic signaling that they are no longer, that these countries wouldn't define what India would do. India is no more
Yeah,
reactive or defensive, but they're more likely to assert aggressive foreign policies, and most importantly to China, who's a major regional ally, saying that India doesn't just have regional ambitions but also has global ambitions to become a security power. But on the other hand, if we come back to Pakistan, I think Pakistan is more on the survival mode, right? They're leaning more towards tactical weapons, cyber capabilities,
Yes,
and more likely to undertake deterrence in order to compensate the imbalance that they have with India. So I think the Indian side is much more dominant. Also, I really like the point that you made with it with regard to Turkey, because we saw that during India-Pakistan conflict, India and Turkey also had
yes,
one-on-one not so good relations and communications, because out of nowhere it came, and it also affected their tourism, their relations, and there was a strong anti-Turkey sentiments even among the Indian audience. And it was quite a novel thing, because when we talk about India Pakistan, only the three or four countries that comes to our mind, how they might shape, influence, and play a very important role, whether in terms of Kashmir or no Kashmir. But Turkey was, I think, was like a was did come out of nowhere, and it just was in the communications. And it, of course, I do agree that it will play a very important role even in the future, because the way that they have a very supportive relations to the Pakistan, the way they were not ready or even willing to have support or good relations with India during the conflict, it kind of strained the relationship, and absolutely, I think it is a great insight to, focus on this country rather than, some of the major redundant countries that we always talk about. But also, how do you think that this might affect the regional stability in this sense? Like, because there are a lot of assumptions that this might go on, this might not go on, and how do you see the regional stability and security affected because and aftermath of this conflict, and also because of the all these major powers playing, becoming an important player?
yes, it will affect regional stability, and also I think it depends to a great extent on how India and Pakistan, navigate through not just this conflict, but how much do they allow other regional and extra-regional powers to get involved and shape the narrative or the direction of this conflict. I think it would depend to a
Hmm.
great extent. And I think as
Yeah.
far as South Asia is concerned, I think the region is already, I would say, unstable, and there is because we do live in a very volatile neighborhood, and particularly most of India's neighbors, I mean, they do have not just their internal problems, but they are also creating problems for India, and India is trying its best to maintain its stand and to protect its economic and security interests. So I think uh, I don't think we will see the stability, particularly in India-Pakistan relations, but also, what is happening in Bangladesh since last 1 year. That is also a cause of concern
Hmm.
for India, because after Pakistan, I mean,
Yeah.
Bangladesh also is a major country, and Bangladesh has been one country with which India had a good relations. I won't say there weren't
Yeah.
any issues, but still India did maintain stable relations with Bangladesh. But I think now that those relations have also ended with a regime change, and I think
Hmm.
India is just waiting and watching how it unfolds, like it did in case of the Maldives. Because in Maldives
Yeah.
also we saw the new president, he came on the back of the campaign of India out. But then India played the
Hmm.
waiting game. India showed patience with Maldives, continued with its
Yeah.
humanitarian support, and I think now India Maldives relations are getting back on track with Prime Minister Modi's visit to Malé recently to attend Maldives Independence Day. That is what India has
Yeah.
been doing as a responsible power and
Yeah.
also as a democratic country. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this will also increase arms race in the region, because, for example, India recently did like a lot of missile testings, Pralay, Agni 2, Prithvi 1. And also Pakistan, on the other hand, is doing missile testing. They both are doing like civilian drills,
Yes.
emergency drills, and stuff like that. And also because of the because of the strained relations with the Bangladesh with the recent months that we have seen after the regime change. And there was some certain news and reports about India doing surgical strikes even in the Bangladesh and targeting some of the terrorist
Yes,
groups over
yes.
there. I think we are going to see not just strained relations but increase in the arms race in the region. And as I said previously, that because this was more like a signal even to China, right? That India is no longer going to be reactive or defensive, but going to play a very, they are going to use the technology or the developments of the weapons that they are undertaking, right? So, in terms of that, also, there'll be increase in arms race even from the China side, right? They'll be more prepared. Because China has also seen how their defense systems kind of worked with Pakistan, right? When they were not able to really track or maybe, yeah, right. So I think it also gave them a very practical example. Okay, this might be working, this might not. And the countries are more involved in advancing and improving their technology. I've also heard recently that Pakistan has undertaken some of the Babar cruise missile tests and stuff like that. So I think though it is on the survival mode, but again they are going to use everything in order to counterbalance the imbalance that they have with India, right? So I think there'll be high tectonic shift and more arms race in the region that we'll see in the coming decades.
Yes, definitely. And I think not just after this conflict, but arms race has been going on in the region for the past many years. And like India remains one of the biggest importer of arms, Pakistan is also not very behind when it comes to, not just
Hmm.
manufacturing arms, but also importing arms. Although the defense budgets of both the countries are very different, but still the arms race will go on. And yes, you are right when you say that Pakistan might be on survival mode, but it will do everything in its power to just to counterbalance India or just to keep the Kashmir issue alive, maybe for its domestic audience
That's
or for appeasing anyone. But Pakistan will do its
yeah.
best. That's what it has been doing.
Yeah. So because as you mentioned, and that comes to my next question as well, do you think that this will be the new normal in South Asia? Because as you said, Pakistan will make sure that the Kashmir issue is still going on, right? So that means, are we predicting that there could be more conflicts, not high level intensity conflicts leading to nuclear and stuff like that, maybe like low level conflicts? Is this like a new normal for South Asia, that we are going to see escalations like, increasing slowly and steadily, using missiles and having short term conflicts on a regular basis now?
Uh, I think yes, it would say at least for India, I would say that this is the new normal, responding to the conflicts, like we say, giving a befitting reply and not just, condemning terror attacks and, just involved in, uh, tracking and neutralizing terrorists. But now India is actually going after the terror bases, terror infrastructure inside Pakistan, which I think has been the new normal for India since past many years, particularly after the surgical strikes after the Uri and Balakot strikes. So this conflict is a step ahead, like I said in the beginning, and I think, like you said, Pakistan is not going to stop. Similarly, I don't think there is any reason for India, not to attack Pakistan or not to, attack terror infrastructure or even like military bases like it did in this conflict. So I think this is a new normal, and India will follow the same trajectory that it has been following since the Uri attack. That is not to
Yeah.
just stay inside Indian territory and engage with the terrorists, but to actually go where the terror bases are, go where they originate. So I think terror
Yeah.
infrastructure and military facilities of Pakistan. That is what India will continue to target if Pakistan continues carrying out attacks against India. So I think India has already
No.
established a new normal in its conflict with Pakistan.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the South Asia has seen a permanent fundamental change in their security environment. Earlier, we thought that deterrence means no war, but I think at this point in time, deterrence is shrinking so much that deterrence means no longer nuclear war, but below the nuclear line, every war is possible under
Yes,
the name of deterrence. So I think this is like a new normal for South Asia, and where the regions have to really adapt fast, because this is what we will see. And again, as I mentioned, deterrence means no longer no war. There will be conflicts and wars, but just below the threshold of nuclear
yes,
weapons.
yes. Yes,
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think Pakistan has, what has happened is that Pakistan has used this nuclear deterrence for a long time, but it was all talk and there was no action, which also meant that even they understand the risks associated with it. But I agree with you when you say that there will be escalation, but the escalation won't reach nuclear warfare.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we hope it doesn't even reach nuclear, because
Yes.
that might give like disastrous effects that we wouldn't even want to imagine on either side. But thank you so much, Mr. Niranjan Manjari. And we were so delighted to have you on board. We had great insights and perspectives. It was very interesting on how you kind of interpreted the whole conflict, and most importantly the role of Turkey. That was very insightful. And that, we always, as I mentioned even earlier, we always focus on some of the very mainstream actors, and they are, it's quite redundant to always focus on China, Russia, and America. But I think when you talked about Bangladesh, when you talked about Turkey, and expressing how those players are also very important in interpreting how the conflict is and how it can be in the future, and their role, I think it was tremendously insightful. I think it was just, there is much more clarity for the people to really understand how to view the conflict, understand, and where it could last in the coming years or coming months. I don't think so now we are even talking about years, we are just talking about some months, and there
Months.
could be something again,
Yes.
because the situation is so much volatile, right? And even I think from both the sides, it's just becoming so much aggressive and fragile at the same time. So, but I really thank you for being on this podcast, and sharing your insights on Asia Pacific, and how this conflict kind of unfolded, and how we see why it matters in the coming years.
Thank you for inviting me, and it was a pleasure to have this conversation with you on this very important topic because India-Pakistan conflict of 2025 has really, uh, uh, shaped, has, ability to shape the dynamics of the security architecture of the entire Asia-Pacific region. So I would say thank you for taking up such an important topic and for discussion. And once again, it was a great pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, definitely. It is so important to talk about it every day on a different perspective, because there's so much happening, and there could be so much happening in the coming years. And we'd like to hear insights from you more and more, in order to understand that how this could unfold in the coming days.
Yeah, thank you. I hope to join again in this conversation.
Yeah, definitely.